Many years ago, in a small Indian village, a farmer had the misfortune of owing a large sum of money to a village moneylender. The moneylender, who was old and ugly, fancied the farmer's beautiful daughter, so he proposed a bargain. He said he would forego the farmer's debt if he could marry the farmer's daughter. Both the farmer and his daughter were horrified by the proposal, so the cunning moneylender suggested that they let Providence decide the matter. He told them that he would put a black pebble and a white pebble into an empty money bag. Then the girl would have to pick one pebble from the bag. If she picked the black pebble, she would become his wife, and her father's debt would be written off. If she picked the white pebble, she need not marry him, and her father's debt would still be written off. But if she refused to pick a pebble, her father would be thrown into jail. They were standing on a pebble-strewn path in the farmer's field. As they talked, the moneylender bent over to pick up two pebbles. As he picked them up, the sharp-eyed girl noticed that he had picked up two black pebbles and put them into the bag. He then asked the girl to pick a pebble from the bag. Now, imagine you were standing in the field. What would you have done if you had been the girl? If you had to advise her, what would you have told her? Careful analysis would produce three possibilities. A. The girl should refuse to take a pebble. B. The girl should show that there were two black pebbles in the bag and expose the moneylender as a cheat. C. The girl should pick a black pebble and sacrifice herself in order to save her father from debt and imprisonment. Take a moment to ponder over the story. The above story is used with the hope that it will make us appreciate the difference between lateral and logical thinking. The girl's dilemma cannot be solved with traditional logical thinking. Think of the consequences if she chooses the above logical answers. What would you recommend the girl to do? This is what the girl actually did. The girl put her hand into the money bag and drew out a pebble. Without looking at it, she fumbled and let it fall onto the pebble-strewn path, where it immediately became lost among all the other pebbles. Annoyed, "Oh, how clumsy of me," chuckles, she said, "but never mind. If you look into the bag for the one that is left, you will be able to tell which pebble I picked. Since the remaining pebble is black, it must be assumed that she had picked the white one. And since the moneylender dared not admit his dishonesty, the girl changed what seemed an impossible situation into an extremely advantageous one." What does this story teach us? It is that the most complex problems do have a solution. It is only that we don't attempt to think in that direction. It teaches us to think out of the box, or think laterally.
What is lateral thinking? Lateral thinking is creative or non-linear thinking. It is thinking differently or doing something different, doing something that might be quite navel and unconventional in nature. According to Edward de Bono, who propagated this notion, intelligence is a potential that all of us have, and thinking is a skill to use that potential well. It channels our intelligence appropriately. One may be a good thinker without being an intellectual and vice versa. Here is another story that illustrates the use of lateral thinking. A millionaire named Thomas walked into a popular bank in the middle of New York City and requested to speak to a loan officer. He did not inform the staff of his immense riches, but he simply said that he was going away on business for a few weeks to another country and needed to borrow a small sum of money, $5,000. Banks being banks, they immediately asked for security on the loan. Thomas pointed out of the window to the shiny new Ferrari parked right in front of the bank. He took the title, paperwork and keys out of his pocket and slapped them down on the counter like a man on a mission. The staff went to work checking out the validity of his ownership, and sure enough, everything was checked out. And of course, which bankie was going to turn down $250,000 in collateral security for a mere $5,000 loan? Thomas left the bank with his $5,000, and the bank employee took Thomas's keys and drove the brand new Ferrari down into the bank's underground garage. He assured Thomas that it would be perfectly safe down there. Thomas then left the bank and caught his flight to his faraway land. Anyway, 2 weeks went by, and sure enough, the bank opened Monday morning to see Thomas stroll in and slap the $5,000 he had borrowed back on the counter, plus the interest, which was around $15.
The loan officer asked for the car to be brought round to the front of the bank and then asked Thomas a question. "Our bank prides itself in details and customer services," he said. "And while you were away, we did a background check, it's routine, and discovered you are actually one of the wealthiest men in America. Why on earth would you need to borrow $5,000? It just doesn't make sense." Thomas smiled, picked up the keys from the counter and said, "Can you tell me another way I could have parked my new Ferrari in the middle of New York for 2 weeks for just $15 and still expect to get it back in top condition?" With that, Thomas walked out of the door and the loan officer smiled a bigger smile. Examples of applications of lateral or non-linear thinking abound in several fields. In cricket, Kerry Packer introduced day-night matches and colourful balls and clothing, a departure from tradition that became so successful that the whole world of cricket adopted it. Australia recently experimented with 2 different captains for the Test and one-day matches. Nowadays, the T20 matches have become a rage. Lateral thinking expert Edward de Bono says, "With logic, you start with certain ingredients, just as in chess you start out with given pieces." But what are those pieces? In most real-life situations, the pieces are not given, just assume they are there. We assume certain perception, concepts, and boundaries. One is always confusing conditioned thinking with creative thinking. De Bono explains that lateral thinking is concerned not with playing with the existing pieces, but with seeking to change those very pieces. It is concerned with the perception part of thinking.